The committee will come to order, and without objection, the chair is authorized to declare recesses of the committee at any time. And before we begin, Secretary Raimondo has informed us that she has only 2 hours available for this hearing. So in the interest of time, Ranking Member Lofgren and I are limiting ourselves to very brief opening statements, and we're asking the Secretary to do the same. Additionally, to give as many members as possible a chance to ask questions, and in concurrence with Ranking Member, I ask unanimous consent to limit each member's Q&A to 4 minutes without objection. So ordered. I would also like to request unanimous consent to submit 2 statements for the record. The first is from Chairman Lucas, who could not be with us here today. As you know, he has had a terrible accident with a bull. He's a rancher, and he is recuperating. We look forward to his return soon and to his leadership, because his leadership is dearly missed. The second is a full opening statement from myself. Without objection, we will enter that. So I'll recognize myself for 1 minute for an opening statement. So I would say welcome to the Science, Space, and Technology Committee's first oversight hearing on the CHIPS for America program. Secretary Raimondo, we appreciate your willingness to testify today. Thank you for being here. I understand you were in traffic. I'm sorry to hear that. That's not a rare occurrence. But your last minute notice that you were only able to dedicate 2 hours of your time to discussing a $50 billion program is frustrating, to say the least, to the members of this committee who have a responsibility to oversee your use of these taxpayer dollars and ensure that the program is a success. I hope that you will at least commit to meeting in person with any members of this committee, whether Republican or Democrat, who are not able to ask the questions that they prepared for this hearing. And I hope that despite our time constraints, that we'll be able to have a productive discussion today. Congress funded the CHIPS program to bolster national security and to ensure that semiconductors can be produced here in the United States in a cost-competitive way. But the policies advanced by this administration during implementation have been criticized for driving up the cost of doing business. So I expect that to be a strong topic of discussion today, along with guardrails to protect our investments from benefiting our adversaries. I look forward to the dialogue that we will have today, and I look forward to hearing more about the near-term future of the CHIPS program directly from the Secretary. So thank you, Secretary Raimondo, for taking the time to join us today. So I would like to now recognize the ranking member, gentlewoman from California, for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and like you, I ask unanimous consent that my full statement be made part of the record. In the interest of time, I'll just say that CHIPS for America represents really a historic investment in reshoring our semiconductor manufacturing and innovation capacity. However, there are challenges in carrying out such an ambitious program. One of the concerns I have, which I've mentioned to the Secretary, is what steps the CHIPS program is taking to ensure that companies receiving funding implement the very highest standards for the handling of toxic chemicals. I come from Silicon Valley, where we've seen firsthand the tremendous benefits of the semiconductor industry, but also problematic environmental legacy of some chip production. So we have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to revitalize the U.S. semiconductor industry, but we also have an opportunity to do it in a way that protects American workers. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you very much. Now recognize, thank you, Ms. Lofgren. I recognize the Secretary for her testimony for 4 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you and good morning. A few things. One, I'm delighted to be here. Secondly, I spoke with the chairman yesterday and reassured him that I'm happy to spend any amount of time with any of you on any topic. Also, after speaking with you yesterday, we shifted the schedule a bit, so be able to be here for at least 2.5 hours. I just want to thank you for this chance to update you on the CHIPS and Science Act. As outlined in detail in my written testimony, we've made significant progress since about a year ago when the bill was passed. As evidence of that, for CHIPS, we've received more than 500 statements of interest from companies who want to participate and about 100 applications for the incentive program. So we are on track to launch the National Semiconductor Technology Center this fall, which I know many of you will want to talk about. At EDA, we've launched 2 initiatives, the Tech Hubs initiative and the Recompete program. We're working as quick as we can to have announcements on both of those programs this fall. I will tell you both of these programs are massively oversubscribed. In addition, NTIA, NIST, and NOAA are working to implement additional provisions. Happy to talk about any of that. I just want to reiterate what you all know and what the chair and ranking member have said. In addition, if successful in implementing CHIPS and Science, which is, as the ranking member said, unprecedented and historic, the U.S. will become the premier destination in the world for where we design new chip architectures, do research and development in our research labs, make chips for every end use, manufacture chips at scale with American workers in the United States, and package the most sophisticated chips in the world, all here on our shores. That's the vision that we're trying to achieve with your support. And, with that, I'm happy to take your questions.
I want to thank the Secretary for her testimony. Now the Chair would recognize himself for 4 minutes. Secretary Raimondo, during negotiations of the CHIPS and Science Act, Science Committee Republicans developed strong guardrails that prohibit any company that accepts a grant incentive from expanding or building new advanced semiconductor manufacturing facilities in a country of concern, including China, for 10 years. The language also gives the authority to you, Madam Secretary, to recover any incentives received should a company be found in violation of this. Can you please provide a short update on when the Department of Commerce's rule for implementing the guardrails will be finalized so that we can review it, considering the public comment period ended in May?
Yes, thank you for your question. So the answer is very, very soon. In a matter of weeks, that will be completed. I'm trying to move as fast as I possibly can, but more important than going fast, we need to get it right, especially with respect to these guardrails. The whole purpose of the CHIPS program is national security. And so we have to be absolutely vigilant that not a penny of this helps China to get ahead of us, and that none of these companies who receive our money do any research with China or investment in China that in any way undermines our own national security. So very soon it'll be out, and look forward to working with all of you to implement this program to achieve its goals.
Okay. The CHIPS and Science Act requires guardrails to be a part of any agreement or contract the department enters as part of the $39 billion taxpayer-backed CHIPS incentive program. How is it then that the department has been accepting applications for the incentives program since March without the guardrails being finalized? And how is the department making it clear what commitments that applicants will be required to make when applying for the program if this rule has not been finalized? It makes no sense.
Yeah. So as you can imagine, these are incredibly complicated applications. We're requiring a huge amount of information from these companies. We obviously aren't going to make any commitments to any companies, and certainly not give any money to any companies until the guardrails are firmly in place. But if we're trying a parallel process so we can move fast. So we thought it was prudent to start seeking information so that companies could get into a good position to apply while finalizing the guardrails. But obviously no commitments will be made to any companies until the guardrails are in place.
All right. Can you commit that no application will be approved or money sent out the door until the guardrails are finalized? Yes or no?
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you very much. Second, the department is standing up tracks to provide space situational awareness data. Isn't this reinventing the already existing system at the Pentagon? Very briefly.
No, No, we're working on, like you say, space situational awareness with the Pentagon, with an interagency, to track the commercial satellites and commercial space traffic. It's more congested in space. We have to prevent collisions and the like. So no, it's an interagency process, and I think it's necessary.
Okay. All right. The CHIPS and Science Act forbids companies from using CHIPS funds for stock buybacks. The CHIPS Act notice of funding opportunity, however, goes further. It asks applicants whether they plan to engage in any stock buybacks over the next 5 years and states that Commerce will, quote, evaluate applications based on the extent of the applicant's commitments to refrain from stock buybacks, unquote. Does that mean that Commerce will deny funding for applicants who plan to engage in any stock buybacks? And if not, then how should companies who engage in stock buyback in the normal course, what would they think about this provision?
No is the answer to your question. If you do buybacks, you are still eligible to receive the money. But look, as you know, the whole point of this program is for companies to invest in research and development, manufacturing in the United States. And so we're going to be tough on companies. Like, we want to see what are their investment plans? What are their research and development plans? They should be putting their money into investing in America and research and development in America, so we protect taxpayer money. We can't be giving them money so they can go give it to their shareholders to make more money. This is money to race ahead for investments in semiconductor industry in our country. So it's not a prohibition, but it is a signal to industry that we are serious, that this is not about padding their bottom line. This is about enhancing their ability to innovate in America.
Well, I have one more question, but I'm out of time about fluorotechnology and PFAS, but I will submit that for the record. And so at this time, I would like to recognize the ranking member from California.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Madam Secretary. It's great to see you here, and I appreciated the time to talk to you earlier about health and safety for workers in the chip industry. As I mentioned in my opening statement, Silicon Valley has been the home of chip manufacturing for many years. It's a wonderful opportunity. It's helped build the valley. On the other hand, there has sometimes been a downside. Multiple studies in the 1980s and 90s found that women working at microelectronics manufacturing sites had miscarriages at twice the expected rate, and although the industry has made significant strides in terms of the use of hazardous chemicals, in some cases there is no alternative for a hazardous chemical in the manufacturing, and in that case, special care must be made to prevent exposure to the workforce. I'll just note that this is from an OSHA missive, and I'll read it. OSHA's mandatory PELs remain in effect. However, OSHA recommends that employers consider using the alternative occupational exposure limits because the agency believes that exposures above some of these alternative occupational exposure limits may be hazardous to workers even when the exposure levels are in compliance with OSHA standards. And in fact, it's the EPA standards in those cases that need to be applied. I'll just say this: I appreciate your willingness to work with me on this. I look forward to vigorously engaging with you to see how we can get the great benefit of the CHIPS Act, but also protect our workforce. Let me ask another question. There's a company in California, not in my district, with an important question that has broad policy implications. This company never offshored, and so as a consequence, their costs were higher because labor costs are higher in the United States. They are worried that they might be at a disadvantage in the selection process because of their higher cost structure. What's the department's general view on using the loan program to use U.S.-only semiconductor manufacturers to refinance existing debt if it results in additional capital investments in the United States What's the view on using the loan program to allow U.S.-only semiconductor manufacturers to use loans for purposes of funding operational and workforce development costs? And is there concern about the higher cost structure disadvantaging them in the competition accurate?
Yeah. So a couple reactions, mindful of time. On your first point, I am totally committed to working with you like we talked about. These are necessary. These companies use a lot of chemicals. Necessarily, it's heavily chemical based. And as you say, sometimes OSHA isn't enough. So let's figure out better ways to work with companies to
Absolutely.
secure health and safety. Secondly, the answer is yes. We look well upon using loan authority and grant authority to help small companies, U.S.-based companies, to defray the additional cost associated with the cost of U.S. labor. I would say, in a way, that's the point of this whole program. I mean, the truth of it is, you come from Silicon Valley, that's where all semiconductors once were, and then it was in search of cheap labor that these companies all went to Taiwan, China, Malaysia, et cetera. That's the point of this subsidy, to allow American companies and American workers, stay in this business, accounting for the fact that it is more expensive. So I'd say we're going to look. I have assembled an amazingly talented team. There was a piece in the Wall Street Journal about it a few months ago. I'd welcome any of you to come over to the department to meet this team. We have some top-notch investment people, a top-notch loan expert. We're going to be as creative as possible to stretch the money as much as we can to help American businesses.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My time has expired, and I yield back.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. And now I'd like to recognize the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Posey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just slightly off that topic, regarding NOAA's misguided East Coast vessel speed rule regarding the North Atlantic right whales. We had heard from NOAA that one or less whales on average per year have been killed by boats. And I'm wondering why the administration would move forward with releasing the proposed rule later this year, and then next year hold a workshop on how technology can help protect the whales. It seems like they're putting the cart before the horse.
So one thing I've learned since being Commerce Secretary is that the most complicated issues aren't semiconductor technology, it's the fish issues. And I would be very happy, coming from the ocean state myself, to come back to you on that, sir, and give you, a proper answer. And I'll have Dr. Spinrad, who runs NOAA, get in touch with you. But I will say this. I am personally sympathetic to both sides. We have to, preserve the environment and protect the whales. But also, I know a lot of people make a living as fishermen. And so let me come back to you with a better answer.
Yeah. As the former governor, I wouldn't expect that you would like the way they rule out. And so I appreciate that answer.
Yeah, it's complicated. They're often subject to lawsuits. So permit me to come back to you.
I'll do that. What specific steps is the Department of Commerce taking to protect American interests at standard bodies where China has flooded them with high rates of participants and submissions?
I worry a lot about this. We have a whole working group inside of Commerce at NIST just focus on showing up at standards bodies. Good. And exactly what you say. It sounds, not sexy and boring, except when the Chinese write the standards to favor them, then we get locked out. And so I have put a huge priority on reinvigorating our presence at standard-setting bodies all over the world. One little example I'll give you is we were successful in getting the American chairperson of the ITU, the Telecommunications Union, because the Russians were backing an alternative, and we won. And that's because we focused on it and put a campaign in place because, standards really matter.
Well, you just answered my next three questions. So, Mr. Chairman, I'll yield back the balance of my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Posey.